the session. Uh, Hope you all are safe. My name is Ishan Agrawal, and I am events coordinator at SARC. As promised, we are here with GMAT Talk to clear all your doubts on how to get into one of the best B schools. And this session is going to be really insightful, so stay tuned till the end. Before we move further, I request you all to feel free to write all your questions in the Q&A tab. We will be having a question and answer session at the end to answer them all, with a question getting most upvotes getting answered first. Uh, I'd like to introduce the speaker for the session. We have with us our very own alumni, Mr. Mehul Jain. He graduated from IIT Bombay in 2011 and he completed his MBA from INSEAD in 2015 with a GMAT score of 770 out of 800. He has worked for 6+ years in business consulting at Kearney and 2 years as vice president at Guild Capital. We welcome you, sir.
Thanks, Ishan. Thank you very much, and good to be here back on campus virtually. Yeah, go ahead. The stage is all yours.
Yeah, right, sir. So let's straight away begin with the questions. So, sir, my first question for you is why and when did you decide to do an MBA?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting question. I thought I would do an MBA right after INSTE, but then in the fourth year I realized that if you do an MBA right after undergrad, you really miss out a lot on what the MBA teaches you. There's no context because you've never done anything related to management or business. So I delayed it. I got into a consulting firm. And after a couple of years or 3 years in consulting, I thought this is the right time. And Carney or the typical top tier consulting firms, they sponsor your MBA. So financially, it was an interesting decision. I was getting a 1 year break because once you actually go sponsored, you already have a job. So there's no pressure of getting a job after the MBA. There's a very simple reason. I thought MBA would be an interesting break from the career, and it was paid for, almost completely paid for. So I did it, and that was I decided to do an MBA 2 years into consulting, but you really have to apply a year in advance. So I could only go 3 years after uh, I joined Carney from campus.
Right, right. That was a wonderful answer. Uh, so my next question is, what do you think is the right time to start the preparation for GMAT?
So it's a very contextual question because it depends on the person. The first thing I would suggest everyone to do when they decide or when they finalize that they want to do an MBA is obviously take that decision at least 1 year before you actually want to go to do an MBA, because the best chances of getting in are 1 year in advance of your session. So if the session is starting in August 2025, you should start your application process in June or July, August, or June or July 2024, about a year in advance. GMAT preparation won't take a lot of time if your English is good, because the maths is very simple to prepare. The quant section is basically 10th 11th standard level, and all you need is speed. So you just need to brush it up, and you will have simple geometric theorems or algebraic expansions that you have to kind of get into your muscle memory, and then you're done. Uh, the verbal section is the one which for everyone, obviously for CAT, for GRE, for GMAT, everywhere verbal section is where engineers struggle the most. Now, when you register for GMAT, they give you 2 practice tests, and they're pretty good. So I would suggest right after you register, you give your first practice test, and depending on the score in that practice test, you allocate the time that you want to spend. At max, I would say 2 months. I spent about 3 weeks while my job was going on, and that was enough. GMAT is not a very difficult exam. You don't have to rote learn a lot of things. Even the English section, even the verbal section is very logical. There are about 10 to 12 different types of questions they ask. So if you understand the logic behind those types of questions, you'll be set. You don't have to solve 10,000 questions. You solve a few questions of 10 to 12 different types, and I think 4 or 5 are very easy. And when you speak English, you are very well aware of all those nuances of English, and there are some where the way we speak is actually wrong, and then you have to correct it. Those are the ones which need the most practice. So I would say 2 months at max, and if you're already getting a good score in the mock test, spend a couple of weeks just making sure you're there. Give the second practice test, and then schedule your final GMAT exam.
Yeah. Right, sir. So my next question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages for a student from an engineering background who applies for a foreign MBA in terms of the admission and career opportunities ahead?
Um, the educational background of engineering helps you a lot in terms of like MBA has become very quantitative these days. It's driven by analytics. 80% of the MBA is driven by analytics. So if you are an engineer, you'll find it very easy to do finance, operations, research, all these subjects. Even marketing will be very easy. Only organization behavior is the one where you need psychology, and an arts background has much more advantage. But everything else has become very data focused. So as an engineer in management, you have a lot of advantages. The disadvantage is that there are a lot of engineers who apply for these schools. So if you are an engineer by background and then you get into one of the standard either a engineering job or even a consulting job, you become what they call a standard profile. So you will be matched with a huge peer group. So if you're deciding to do an MBA now and you want to do it in a couple of years, try to differentiate your profile a little bit. Given that you've already decided that you want to do an MBA from a top tier school, you have to differentiate it either through some social venture or doing a startup or doing something that is non-standard, getting some international work experience, which also differentiates your profile. Uh, and I mean, male engineer, consultant, or finance professional is like the most standard profile that applies to these schools abroad. So if that is the only thing on your profile, then it's tough to get in, unless you're the best. If you're the best in that domain, you'll get in. But otherwise, you just have to differentiate.
Yeah. Right, sir. That was wonderfully answered. Uh, so my next question is, how much does the performance in the undergraduate matter for an MBA? And to add to that, which career path is most suitable to ensure a foreign MBA, and how much work experience is required, and how can one create his profile for applying for foreign business schools?
Wow, that's a long question. There are actually four questions, four questions in there. But let me take it one bit at a time. So undergrad performance matters less and less the later you apply. So if you apply with 5 years of work experience, it will not matter much. If you apply with 2 years of work experience, it will matter a little more. The problem with undergrad CGPA is that it will also dictate what kind of jobs you have access to after IIT. So you start off, if you go into either consulting or finance, you will probably not get access to the tier one or the day zero, day one firms that we uh, say, right? I mean, and that brand matters a lot more than your undergrad CPA. So if you're able to get a good placement, then your undergrad CPA loses relevance. The second thing about a low undergrad CPA is that your GMAT score matters more if your undergrad CPA, especially in engineering, is low. Because a high engineering CPI means that you're good at analytics. So if that is low, then you have to prove that you're good in analytics through other ways. One of that is GMAT. So your GMAT quant score then matters a lot more. And then what career path is a bit tricky because you can choose a standard career path and you really do well in it. Uh, Focusing on an MBA application to decide what career path you want to choose is like the tail wagging the dog in some ways, because you should really choose a career path based on what you want to do in life. And in fact, you should also choose whether you want to do an MBA or not based on what you want to do in life, right? So don't keep that in mind. Choose a career path which you want to take, which you want to build long term, and then you will realize in a year or so whether an MBA falls in that path or not. And once you realize that, you can then work to build your profile outside of around that career path, and then apply.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that was very well answered. Uh, so, my next question is, many people are not sure if they should go for a foreign MBA or not. So, what factors should one consider before deciding to take this thing up? And on an another note, why did you choose a foreign business school and not an Indian business school?
I'll answer the last question first. So, Indian B schools have a slight disadvantage when it comes to placements compared to foreign B schools. What happens when you join a consulting firm is that once you're there in the consulting firm for 2 years, you're already at a position where Indian MBAs are hired. So then going and doing an Indian MBA is actually counterproductive. But if you do a foreign MBA, you're hired one level higher. So that still makes sense. And that is why I did a foreign MBA. The other factors are money, of course. My MBA was sponsored, but otherwise it's very expensive to do a foreign MBA. You need at least a crore of money to actually go and do an MBA, and then recovering that takes a lot of time. So when you think about it, you have to think about your finances, not just paying for the MBA, but you have to be open to working outside India for a few years, because that is really how you can actually repay the debt that you take. If your finance is not a consideration, then you can go do a foreign MBA. The other difference is that Indian MBAs, first they take fresh grads. Half of the batch is fresh grads with zero experience, and secondly they take a lot more engineers. 90% of the class is engineers, so you don't get that multicultural environment, and your network stays restricted. So that is another advantage of a foreign MBA. But I mean, when you want to do it, you will know what suits best. So if your career path that you've decided, a lot of people have done Indian MBAs and went on to achieve what you want to achieve in that domain. You can just do an Indian MBA. There is no, especially if you want to work in India. If you want to work outside, Indian MBA is probably very difficult to actually then find jobs outside India. Only like 5% of people are able to get jobs outside India after an Indian MBA, or in the next few years. You can do that after 10 years, and that's kind of uh, something that people have done. That they spend 5-6 years in India and then they take a transfer within the same firm and all
Yeah.
those things. What else? Yeah, I think these are the only factors. The other big question is whether you should do an MBA or not, and that is something that you should decide first, and then which MB school are you getting access to? If in India you're getting an IIM, and outside India you're getting something which is ranked 30 or 40, then you're probably at par. You can choose whichever. But if the foreign MBA is ranked below 50, then it's a no-brainer. You should just go to the IIM that is offering you one of the older IIMs. I don't know about the new IIMs. There are too many nowadays.
Yes, sir. Right. That is wonderfully answered. Uh, so my next question is, how did you manage to prepare for GMAT alongside a heavy job, and what was your strategy?
You don't need a strategy to prepare for GMAT. You just give your first practice test. You will realize which areas you're weak in, and then you just prepare those. I used two books. One was the official GMAT guide, and the second one was Kaplan 800. Kaplan 800 is slightly more advanced, and it gives you access to more difficult questions. And the official GMAT guide is more moderate. It has a lot more questions, and they're of average difficulty. You can also do a couple of other books, but GMAT is not a difficult exam. It's much simpler than the CAT exam or the GRE exam in terms of the verbal section. So just give the mock test and you will know. You don't really. The strategy is very simple. You identify your weak areas and just do it. And you can do it alongside your job. GMAT doesn't require you to leave your job. What will require you to leave your job is actually preparing the application. So once you start writing the essays and the questions that they ask in your application, they are like writing a short story, and that will require 10-20 edits, cycles of rethinking what you really want to do in life, and it requires a lot of introspection. So to get into that mind space, working alongside it is very difficult.
Yeah, yeah. Right, sir. So on that, building on the same question, what was the most challenging obstacle for you in your preparation?
Mental fatigue is the most challenging part, because once you start writing your essays, they ask you questions like what are your strengths and weaknesses and what do you want to do in life. and all that has to tie in with what you've done before. So you kind of create a story backward looking in hindsight. And once you complete one B School application, you have four more B School applications that are asking different types of questions, which are all related to introspection. And it took me 2 months to actually complete my applications. So that's a bit tiring. Uh, yeah, I mean, other than that, the, there's no obstacle in actually applying. If you're and finances was not an obstacle. It is for a lot of people because in India, student loans are also capped. So you have to take a lot of things into consideration if you're planning to fund your own MBA. But that was not an obstacle for me because I was sponsored. The rest of the application process is pretty tiring mentally.
Yeah, right, sir. Right, sir. So my next question is, what tips would you like to give for preparing for GMAT, and what are the common mistakes that most students make, and how can they overcome them?
Uh, the first tip is very basic for every exam. You just don't go in thinking it's a difficult exam because it's not. So remove stress from the equation or try to. It's very easy to say. The second is keep it very simple in terms of preparation. Like I said, just identify your weak areas and work on them. Give your first mock test before you start. Give the second one, and then you also have access to two more practice tests if you want. You can buy them. I think it's $45 or $50. Just buy them, give those mock tests as well, and then you go and give the exam. It's not rocket science. It's a very fairly simple exam, given that you guys have already given another competitive engineering exam.
Yeah, sir. Right, right. Uh, Sir, my next question is, how is the whole process from preparing for the entrance exam to building a profile and the actual experience in the business school? Could you please tell us your journey from IIT to consulting at Kearney and then to MBA from INSEAD?
IIT to consulting was the typical placement process that a lot of you will go through. Maybe some of you have already gone through. It's a very rushed process. You don't get a lot of time to think. You get a job, you take it. So I took Kearney, and that was day one, slot one. So I was done with the placement process pretty quickly. And then when I joined, I got very interesting projects. Consulting is a completely different session. I'm sure you guys will have a lot of consulting sessions when you're in your placement year. But it's an interesting space because they teach you a lot about management and business, and uh, you pretty much learn 90% of what you're going to learn in an MBA on the job itself. So when you go from consulting to MBA, you feel like you're not learning a lot in the class. The actual learning happens with your peer group. After 2 years in consulting, I felt like I need a break and I went for an MBA. It was a very simple decision. I asked you need two recommendation letters for your MBA application, and both the recommendations are preferably work related references. So you need good relations with your seniors at work. And they write you recommendations. So my recommendation letters were written by a principal and a partner at Etikani, and then I got into INSEAD. Pretty straightforward. Again, sponsored. So I came back to Etikani, India, and spent another 3 years. Uh, the advantage of doing an MBA internationally, and I forgot to add this point, was that I had access to a lot of jobs internationally. So I could have applied to a lot of different locations like UK, Dubai, Singapore, even US. And that is not available to Indian B schools. That's a very big constraint. Um, so yeah, I mean, that was a very straightforward journey. I came back to consulting, spent another 3 years, and then I spent 2 years at a venture capital fund, Guild Capital, as vice president. And that's I don't know if I'm answering your question. It's a pretty generic answer.
Yeah, that question is very well answered, sir. Yeah, yeah, sir. So my next question is, what after you secure a good score in GMAT? So what is the procedure thereafter?
Identify which schools you want to apply to. That is a process in itself. You should look at the Financial Times rankings. You should look at websites like Poets and Quants, which is I mean, once you start looking at the MBA application process, you will come across these resources. They're very standard resources. but read about what each school has to offer in terms of their specialization or functional. Some schools are good at marketing, some schools are good at finance. Like Wharton is a very famous school for finance. So which field do you want to go into, and you select them. Be realistic about where you can get in at that stage in life. If you don't have a good uh, brand like a McKinsey or a Goldman Sachs and you want to apply to Harvard, then you have to either switch careers, wait longer, apply later. Be a little more realistic, talk to 10, 20 people who have gone and done their MBA and get a sense of where can you realistically get in. And then you apply to those schools. After you get a good score in GMAT, I would say you ideally should take a month, at least a month break from your work and start writing the applications for the B schools that you've chosen. And within that month, you also have to secure two recommendations from seniors at work and reach out to people or seniors who have actually gone to those schools so that they can review your essays. You will send them your essays, they will review it, they'll send it back to you, and you'll finalize your application over that month. But that's about it. I mean, the other stream of thought is how to secure your finances. So you have to start thinking about loans and how do you want to fund it. Scholarships. There is a separate application for scholarships which starts. Also, MBA. Each MBA school has 3 rounds of application. This is an important difference between Indian system and the foreign system. So if you are going for August 2025, the first round will be somewhere around July 2024, and about 40% of admissions will be done with that round of admission. Then you can also apply in January 2025. Another 40% admissions will be done then. And the remaining 20%, or sometimes even less, depending on how many seats lie vacant, are done when you apply around March 2025. I would suggest that you apply in round one or latest by round two. Don't leave your application till round three of the B school. The chances of getting in go down drastically. And the process for securing the visa also becomes much tougher with the limited time frame available.
Yeah, correct, sir. Uh, so my next question, like you already came to this point, but adding on that, like how does your job, which was a consultant at that time, change before and after your MBA? And to generalize that question, what different opportunities does a foreign MBA open up for you?
The type of job opportunities that are open are similar to any MBA. There are leadership positions in corporates. So if you are suppose an engineer in NVIDIA, for example, right, you will not have access to jobs like you might have access to product manager, but you will never have access to say a marketing manager in NVIDIA because you are an engineer. Once you do an MBA, all those managerial jobs become open to you in core engineering companies, and similarly managerial jobs across manufacturing, services, everything. The second field is consulting. I was already in consulting, but sometimes a lot of people who don't get into consulting after undergrad, they apply to B school to get into consulting because that's the other hiring hiring area for consulting firms. About 35 to 40% of MBAs from top schools go into consulting firms. Then there is finance, which is venture capital, private equity. The tricky part about finance is that they actually prefer people who have done finance before their MBA, and you kind of get into a better finance. If you're working for a tier two investment bank, you can get into a tier one investment bank. But if you're an engineer by profession before MBA, it will be very difficult to get into finance after MBA. So these are the top 3 areas, and then there are some rotational programs which are again leadership positions, but they're more structured to give you exposure. So, for example, Shell has a global leadership program where they'll give you 1 year in 3 different countries, and after that they'll decide which business unit and which region will you go and lead for them. So these are pretty interesting opportunities that you have access to. The Indian B schools will give you access to these opportunities in India and very select opportunities globally. Global B school will give you access to these opportunities across the globe. US schools are focused on US based opportunities, but a school like NCEART or London Business School, they open up Dubai, Singapore, Australia as well for you.
Yeah, right, sir. That was very informative. So my next question is, what do you think helps a student to stand out from the other applicants, and like what is that particular factor that these business schools looks for in a student?
Yeah, so I mean, business schools, global business schools don't want the best students. Okay, they want a diverse set of really strong students. So if you are, like I said earlier, engineering, consulting, Indian, they will put you in a pool of such people, and then they will select the top 10 or 15 from that pool. So if you are engineer, startup founder, then you are in a completely different pool. You'll not be compared with those people. So it's very important to differentiate and excel. And it's easier to excel in areas where there is less competition. So social ventures, entrepreneurship, these are areas where there's a higher likelihood of you getting in because there is less people who apply. That's kind of the straightforward logic. But a lot of people from finance and consulting apply. A lot of engineers also apply. If you are in a core job, it's again tougher depending on which firm you're working for. If you're working for a global firm, then it becomes a little easier because the admissions committee, whoever is reading your application, will be well aware of that company. If you're working in Google or Facebook, they will have heard the name. If you're
Yeah,
working for an Indian company, suppose you're working for Byju's, right?
yeah,
Americans might not have heard of Byju's because it doesn't operate in that market. So they will not know how to compare it with others, and they will probably just think it's not a big brand, and they will discount it. So big brands matter. Differentiation matters more than the most analytical or the best person or the best application or the highest GMAT score. And once you differentiate, you have to prove that within that domain you have done exceptionally well, better than your peers.
yeah, yeah. Right, sir. Uh, so my next question is, what advice would you give to someone who is still in his college, doing his BTech, and aspires to go for an MBA in future?
If you've already decided that you want to do an MBA, you should also look at early admission programs. All the top B schools now have early admission programs. Harvard, Stanford, Wharton. You can apply in your final year. Actually, towards the end of your third year, you should already be looking at those things. If you're already, I think, in your seventh semester, I don't know if they are open still, but they might be. So just check it out. Harvard calls it 2+2. You should Google HBS 2+2 and you'll find all the information. You should give your GMAT right away and then apply for it. If you get in, basically what it means is that after you graduate, you can work for 2 years and then go to Harvard. You already have an admission for 2 years from graduation, which is pretty much the earliest that they take in people. Less than 2 years experience, you should not even apply because it's extremely, extremely difficult to actually get in. It's like one in thousands. Maybe one student out of their entire batch might be less than 2 years, but everyone else is at least 2 years. I would say even like, you should at least work for 3 or 4 years before you go. So you apply once you have 2 to 3 years experience, and you go when you have 3 to 4 years. That'll give you the most benefit of the program because you would have learned a lot during your work, and you would also be younger than the peer group. So that gives you another advantage. In terms of any other advice for final third or fourth year students, again, like I said, don't choose your career path based on MBA. Choose whether to do an MBA or not based on what career path you want. Especially when people who are not sure of what they want to do should explore the first job they get. They should explore the second job they get, unless they know what they want to do in life, and only then you decide to do an MBA. And once you decide to do an MBA, you can kind of backfit a story of why you want to do an MBA and what do you want to do after that. But yeah, I mean, don't try to build a profile right away because then you'll make decisions that you might not have made in life, and that is life is more important than MBA. Basically.
Yeah, 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 sir. So with that, the basic questions come to an end. So we move forward to the question and answer session from the audience. We already have a few questions in the Q&A tab. Uh, Feel free to ask all your doubts and queries, and we'll try to get most of them answered. So So the first question is, even if you plan to do a MBA 3 to 4 years after your undergrad, is it advisable to give GMAT right before applying? And how much does recency of your GMAT score matter in your applications?
I would say you will have to submit your applications about a year before you want to do an MBA. So give GMAT 6 months before that, at least. GMAT score is typically valid for 5 years, but try to have it at least like a 3 year recency thing. So you give it and apply in the next 3 years. But officially, it's valid for 5 years. After 5 years, GMAT itself says that the score is invalid, so the college won't honor it. Um, in terms of uh, GMAT right before applying it, I mean, you can give it right now, but then if you don't apply in the next 5 years, then there is no point. So 1.5 years is optimal. What it also does is that it will give you time to give the GMAT a second time. So if your score is say 650 and you're not happy with it because you want to apply only to the top schools, you can prepare a little more and then give it again before you actually start your application and submit the score. So that is actually something that GMAT allows you to do very frequently. You can even give it a third time, but all your scores get submitted. So don't try to limit it. One is ideal, but if the first score is not that, if it's above 700, you shouldn't bother. If it's below that, you can consider giving it again and leave time for it. That's the only timing sensitivity with GMAT.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that answers the question. Uh, so the next question is, you did covered this before, but you can repeat it. So, how does someone go about applying for top B schools like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, etc.? What is expected from the applicant?
Okay, Yale is probably not the best. Okay, I mean, you can look at the FT Times ranking. Yale for a B school is not in the league of Harvard and Stanford. You probably look at Wharton or something. And the first thing you should do is go to their website and read about their admissions process and read about what is the application asking you. What are the essay topics? How many recommendations? What are the deadlines? You should have that at least a year and a half before you want to go to an MBA. You should research everything. You should also research the latest MBA rankings on Financial Times or Business World and make a list of schools that you want to apply to. And you should look at their brochure, which also gives you information on which recruiters come on campus, where have people come from, where have people gone to, what is the average years of experience of the class. All that information is publicly available. So do that research. The second thing you want to do is secure your recommendations. So talk to your seniors, tell them that you want to apply for an MBA. And sometimes it has to be done in private because you really don't want to tell the HR in your company that you want to leave after a year and a half. Right? So all that sensitivity has to be taken care of. Sometimes you want a recommendation from a company that you have worked and left from, so you have to reach out to them, and it might take time to find the right recommender and secure that agreement. So they should agree to submit a recommendation for you. So once you have those two recommendations, then you plan your leave and plan your GMAT and all that. So GMAT is the easier part. Planning your leave for the application and writing essays is the more difficult part because you might have to take a few weeks, and in a lot of companies it's more difficult, and it might become kind of uh, your decision to apply in round one or round two also might depend. Like if you don't get leave in May and you only get it in October, you might have to apply in round two. All that has to be taken care of. Every school has a different. Like Harvard has actually removed all the essay questions. Now they only have one question, which is tell us anything that you want to tell us, and that's kind of as vague as it gets. Stanford still has a few questions. Wharton still has a few questions. They're all different. Write those essays independently. Don't try to use answers for one B school application and just modify them to fit into another B school's questions because it is visible. And yeah, I mean those essays are about yourself, so you really don't need to prepare and reference anything for those essays. You just need to introspect, and then you should send it to a few seniors to get them reviewed, get edited, prepare a final submission, and submit it a few days before the deadline. Obviously, that's normal practice because they will strictly not accept any applications after the deadline.
Yeah, yeah. So that clears a lot of doubts. So the next question from the audience is, what scholarships are available to students applying for MBA in foreign B schools?
There are very few Indian scholarships for business education because it's not considered like arts education has a lot of scholarships in India given by Indians. All the scholarships that you will get are foreign scholarships provided by the B schools themselves. And every B school has a separate process for application of scholarships. So you should definitely research that. There are two types of scholarships. One is a simple plain grant, which they give, they pay your fees and then they, or a part of your fees, and then you don't have to do anything. The other is a debt free loan. So a lot of these schools, what they do is they will pay your tuition fees, and then you have to return it to them in the next 3 or 4 years without interest. So it's an interest-free loan for you to be able to just do it. And then these scholarships are dependent either on your means, so you should have proof of income of your parents and yourself if you're applying for these scholarships. Find need-based scholarships, and then there are merit-based scholarships, which will make you write another essay and you have to kind of prove why you deserve that scholarship uh, with a 250 word or 500 word essay. And this is very standard. This is also listed on the website. I'm not telling you anything that's not publicly available here, but be sure to include this in your timeline because the scholarship applications don't start after you get admitted. They run in parallel. So you have to actually, you can't wait for your admission decision to prepare for scholarship applications. You have to submit them in parallel a few days after or before the actual admission process.
Yeah, yeah, right, sir. I hope that answer your questions. Uh, so the next question is, how important is your field of work on the job before you apply? Is there an inherent bias towards consult or finance sectors in the selection process?
There is no inherent bias, but there is an inherent bias in the application statistics. So a lot of consultants apply, a lot of finance folks apply. So 30% of people who get into these schools are consultants because they just seem to be the biggest application pool. And these schools think of them as students who can get placed very easily because they're analytically strong and they're from consulting, so they can get to a better consulting firm. And some of them are sponsored, so they're anyway going back to their own consulting firm. So it improves their recruitment statistics. So they take a good bunch of people who are consultants, but it still leaves 70% for the other domains. Finance is not that big, especially except for LBS and Wharton. Finance is not a very big pool of intake. They may be 10% or something, but it's not like a huge chunk. And then everything else is open. Like if you are in say oil and gas industry, there might be 100 people who apply to Harvard from that industry, and they'll pick two or three of them, which is pretty much the same percentage that they would pick from consulting. So there is no statistical bias. There's just a bias in terms of the number of people who apply from that domain.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that answers your question. Uh, so the next question is quite detailed. How does two how does these two compare? Masters in management just after undergraduation versus executive MBA from USB school after 2 to 5 years of experience.
Okay, there are three categories. Executive MBA is probably not the term he wanted to use. So, Masters in Management is right after graduation. MBA is 2 to 5 years. Executive MBA is actually another program that they offer, which is typically 8 to 10 years after you 2 years after you get into a job, which is for senior executives to go higher from CMO to CEO kind of promotion. So that is, I would advise you to do an MBA if you want to get a good professional kick out of it. Because masters in management and executive MBA don't have that level of recognition in the industry. Masters in management again will, it all depends on who gets in, right? Masters in management people apply right after undergrad, so the companies don't expect them to be excellent, polished professionals. So the jobs that they get are 2 levels below the normal MBA program, and the normal MBA program gets the best pool of admission, best pool of students. It's like IIT versus NIT, right? I mean, the people who get in are higher ranked by definition. Here also, the people who apply to a normal MBA program are much stronger profiles, and that will define your network for your entire life. The 1,000 or 500 people that are studying with you, they will be friends forever. So, or some of them. And if they get into really good positions, then you have a very strong network. If you go to masters in management, that network will be a little weaker. Executive MBA is, I mean, if you don't have a great undergrad or a great MBA, then to get a big MBA brand on your resume, you do an executive MBA, and so that the company can say that it's senior executives are MBA from so and so school. It's basically a paid stamp by the company that is actually retaining you. I wouldn't suggest you to do an executive MBA. Only if you find yourself 10 years into your career not moving upwards and stuck, then you can consider an executive MBA. Otherwise, don't think about that.
Yeah, right. So that was wonderfully answered. So the next question that we have is what parameters led your firm to sponsor your MBA? Do they require STH of you after that? Uh, and what did you
Require,
have to
sorry,
do?
what? Require what? Sorry.
STH.
Okay, I
I
don't know
think
for
it's
that.
a typing mistake. And continuing the question, what did you have to do to get the sponsor, and how do they decide that?
Yeah, I mean, every firm has their internal guidelines. So consulting firms, I think, are the only firms in India that sponsor. I know some other firms outside India who sponsor a foreign MBA as well. Some firms might sponsor Indian MBAs, but all the top consulting firms, McKinsey, BCG, Bain, Carney, they sponsor to some extent. They didn't require. I mean, I don't know what they. I was there for 2 years. A minimum of 2 years was required, and I had to submit an application internally with my reviews, and they decided to sponsor me. I mean, it's not a very transparent process. You submit a 250-word explanation of why they should sponsor you, and they choose whether to sponsor you or not. And you have to come back to the firm for 2 years after your MBA, so that they waive off the financial sponsorship that they provided, and they don't pay the living expenses; they pay only the tuition fees. And some of the consulting firms don't pay 100% of the tuition fees. Like McKinsey only pays up to the ISB fees. Whatever the ISB fees is, they will pay up to that amount. If you're going to ISB, then great, they are paying 100%. But if you're going to a foreign B school, that comes out to about 30 to 40% of your tuition amount. The rest of it you have to bear yourself. So there are no nuances. So it will depend on which firm you go to or you are in before you apply, basically.
Yeah, right, sir. So the next question that we have, this is already covered, but you can add on it. So how's the consulting job like after BTech? And adding to that, how different it is post MBA? Is it just number crunching or having any decision making responsibilities?
Consulting firms nowadays don't really have that much weight on an MBA. Your job just depends on your career progression and which role you're in. When you join after BTech, you join as an analyst. So it's a lot of number crunching for the first 6 to 9 months. It's very, very tilted towards number crunching, and then they start giving you client ownership, and you go into meetings yourself, and you talk to CXO, CEOs. It's very straightforward. It's more about how much confidence you show rather than anything else in terms of how early or how late they will give you that responsibility. But it starts pretty early in consulting firms. So 6 to 9 months is a very short span of time. But your primary responsibility for the first 3 years is actually data crunching. After that, your responsibility actually becomes managing analysts. So analysts are doing the data crunching. You are reviewing their uh, data and analytics and their output, and you are presenting to the client. That is the associate or the consultant level, depending on which firm you look at. And then there is a manager or a project leader level, which is sort of full ownership of the project, which comes about 5 to 7 years after you join the firm. And that essentially means you're the senior most person on the client in the client office from the consulting firm. So you have to manage all the day-to-day client escalations. If there is an urgent meeting, you have to manage it. You have to manage the output from the entire team, and you also have to manage the communication to your partner and principal who are not there on a day-to-day basis. So the entire project from start to finish, delivery and success, it depends on you. After you go through that manager tenure of 2.5 years, then you get into a more business development and sales side role, which is the principal and partner role, where you have to get new projects from the client. You are actually convincing a client that they should hire this consulting firm for whatever project that you are bidding for. This is the life cycle of a consultant. So depending on what part you enjoy, if you enjoy analytics a lot, you should probably leave after 3 or 4 years. If you enjoy people management and not sales, you should leave after 6, 7 years. And if you enjoy sales, then you should become a partner. And yeah, I mean, that's that's something you'll realize once you enter a consulting firm, what part you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. It's a good career to start. So the only point I want to add, which bringing MBA into it, typically if you are not into consulting before MBA, after MBA you join at the associate or consultant position if you do a foreign MBA, which means you don't have to do direct analytics directly, but you have to monitor other people who are doing analytics. If you do an Indian, if you do an IIM or an ISB, you join as a senior analyst where your core responsibility is still analytics, and then the next stage is associate/consultant. So that's where the MBA, if you're in the consulting firm before the MBA, then it depends on which position you leave from and come back. But if you join a fresh right after MBA, then there are fixed entry points.
Yeah, yeah. Right, sir. So the next question that we have is maybe many people might have this question. Is MBA worth after MTech?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it depends on how much you enjoy the tech part of MTech. It's really, I mean, if you are in a field which you don't want to do for the rest of your life, in the technical sense. So if you are suppose in electrical engineering and you don't want to be dealing with circuits and electrical engineering or hardware for the rest of your life, and you want to do more higher level management, then you should definitely go for an MBA because it will give you access to jobs that you don't have with an MTech. It really depends on what your aspiration is. It can improve your salary as well, given that you might get an international job. But even in India, depending on what your salary or your access to jobs is after the MTech, an MBA may or may not do it. Some people who have done an MTech or an MS and are in computer science and programming have salaries way beyond what MBAs get, and some other people who are in say different fields which are not so hot right now, like civil or whatever, they get paid less and they do an MBA and get paid more. That's also a very simplistic way of putting the financial benefits.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question. So the next question is after my graduation, I want to pursue MBA in a top institute like in INSEAD, Harvard, etc., especially in finance or marketing. But my job will be in a niche technical project management. How would I prepare to get into these institutes?
Um, First of all, finance and marketing, all the top B schools don't differentiate when they take you in. You do a general MBA. Most top B schools make you do a general MBA, and then you can choose electives in that domain, whatever interests you or wherever you want to go. But you will not, your degree will not say MBA in marketing; it will say MBA, and then your transcript will have all the courses. So that's just a clarification. If you are in a very tech focused role and you want to prepare for an MBA, I would suggest you either go into the best technical firm in your domain that is possible and work really hard to get promoted fast, or you do something which is less common, like a startup or a social venture. Obviously, there are financial considerations there, so depending on that, you can choose which path you want to take. And if you feel that you are not matching the prof. So you can look at other people who have gone to that B school. So if you look at Harvard and you search on LinkedIn, Harvard and some technical designation, you will see people who have gone to Harvard and what their designation was before they went to Harvard. And you will know from where can you apply to these B schools, from which uh, position. And there are a lot of people who have come from Google, Facebook, Microsoft, uh, Schlumberger, Shell. So all these are technical firms. I don't know which technical domain this person is from. So I'm giving general examples, but there are a lot of technical people in MBAs. You just need to make sure that you apply from a designation which is well recognized, and a lot of people have gotten from that designation into an MBA school. Other factors also become important. GMAT is important if you're not from finance or consulting, because or if your job is not analytical, GMAT becomes more important. Let me put it this way. If your job is not about data crunching and data analytics, and it's more hardware related, for example, GMAT becomes more important. Your recommendations and essays are always important, whether you are in consulting or tech, so don't discount them. There is a very good chance of you getting in if you plan it properly.
Okay. All right, sir. So the next question that we have is, how are the consulting interviews during placement after graduation?
After graduation, what does that?
Uh,
Consulting interviews will happen during your graduation, right? During the placement, they don't happen after graduation. Right?
yeah, I think
I
she's
mean,
referring to that only.
uh, consulting interviews are, I don't. It's a very detailed topic to get into right now. But you should just Google or YouTube consulting case interviews, and they're actually fairly standard across the globe. Across the world, the format of consulting cases is extremely similar in terms of the diversity and the tonality of the questions. So they will ask. Some people will ask you analytical cases, but whether that case is asked in India or US, if it's an analytical case, the format will be similar. So there is no real difference. So once you start preparing for consulting cases, I think this is the semester where final year students will prepare. You will There'll be 5 consulting companies that will come on campus and tell you what kind of books you can use to prepare for cases. So you don't need a separate session for this. Don't worry
Right.
about it. Once you start, you will have access to all the resources. There are case books from all these schools available, and these cases are the same. I mean, if the question is, are consulting case interviews different after MBA and after BTech, then the answer is no in terms of the questions, yes in terms of the depth of answer that is expected.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Right, sir. So the next question that we have is, sir, my interest is in business, but I don't have any corporate experience, and I want to appear for CAT or GMAT exam. How should I go now?
Um, GMAT is, like I said, it's easy to you register and give a mock test, and you realize how far away you are. 740 plus is excellent score. 700 to 740 is great. 650 to 700 is okay. So, and below 650, depending on which school you want to apply for, it will vary. I mean, the top schools, if you are GMAT as an engineer is below 650, it will be almost impossible to get in because analytics is expected out of you. CAT is a different thing because you have to give a mock test that is not official, so you can still give it. But CAT preparation will take you longer, and CAT happens only once a year or in one small duration in the year. GMAT you can take any time of the year. All these factors you can plan for. It doesn't matter whether you are actually for CAT. It doesn't matter at all where you apply from. So
Yeah.
your background, as long as your CAT score is really good and your communication is fine in the personal interviews that they take, they will take you regardless of what your background is. For GMAT and foreign MBAs, it matters a little bit more because they look at the entire profile and your essays, everything. But I mean, similar to the MTech answer, is it worth? Oh, sorry, similar to the tech background answer that I gave earlier. Same process to apply.
Yeah, sir. Uh, the next question is somewhat already covered, but you can add to it. So, anyone, in your opinion, is it better to pursue MBA directly after undergrad, or is it better to get some work experience and then apply?
If you're doing an Indian MBA, then this question is relevant because from a career speed point of view, you should do it right after undergrad. If your aim is to get to the highest position in your career as quickly as possible, then you should do it right after undergrad. If your aim is to have a great academic experience in an MBA, then there is no point doing it right after undergrad. You should spend a couple of years, and if you don't know what exactly you want to do in your career, then you should not do an MBA right away. Because once you do an MBA, that is the platform that you have to change your career. So if you don't like the career that you get in after undergrad, you can do an MBA and change completely which track. Somehow magically they are open to MBAs. But if you do an MBA already, you get into a field, then you're more or less stuck in that field. So it's a complex decision. Foreign MBAs, you should only apply for after a few years of experience, because the good schools will not take you with less experience, and there is, you only do it once, so you might as well do it from the best school you can do it from.
Yeah, yeah. Correct, sir. So we'll take one last question. So,
Yeah.
how does MBA help in getting into venture capital, and what's your day-to-day work at Guild Capital?
Uh, so venture capital is about financing startups. The fund raises money from some people and then manages that money to invest in startups. It's like a mutual fund. A mutual fund takes money and invests in public equities, right? A person will sit and decide these are the equities I'll buy and sell. In that sense, it's very similar, that the money is not yours, it's someone else's who's not actively managing the money, and you are the money manager, but with a mandate to invest in startups at a certain stage. Guild Capital is an early stage investor, so we invest in startups which are starting off, have just started getting revenue. Say you invest $500,000 or $1 million, and then you kind of grow them over the next 5 6 years. The big difference with venture investing and public equity investing is that in venture capital you cannot sell your stake to anyone, right? I mean, you've bought a stake and you have to find a buyer. In public market you can just list it on the exchange and it will sell, but in startups or private equity, which is a broader term for venture capital and private equity together, you can't sell it, so you have to grow it, prove that the startup is worth some value, and then you can sell your stake to someone who's willing to buy that company. And the success rate is low, like 2 out of 10 startups will succeed, the rest will fail, from the venture funded perspective. Day to day, what you do is you look at startups, you talk to them, you evaluate them, you understand what they are doing, whether this industry will grow, whether this is the startup to bet on in this industry. Once you find the startup, you have to do a deal, you have to agree on some terms. How much money will you give them? How much equity will they give you? Will you get a board seat or not? All these things you can, I mean, it's again, all this is publicly available information. Once you start researching venture capital and a venture capital job, you will find tons of resources online that tell you what the day-to-day role is, what is the structure of the industry, how is early stage different from series A, series B, series C investing, and then what qualifies as private equity investing. Everything is listed, but you're investing, the fundamental is that you are investing in a company which might fail, but if it succeeds it will give you exponential returns. So it's a very risky investment, but with high risk comes high return, and that's the finance industry gospel truth. How does an MBA help you get into venture investing? It doesn't help you a lot, to be honest. You should try, and if you want to do venture investing, you should try to apply before MBA. That is where you will get the analyst position. That's the easiest. Pre-MBA is easier to get than post-MBA, because what they do is they hire analysts and then they don't promote them. They tell them to do an MBA. But once you do it pre-MBA, then you can easily get a venture capital job after MBA. So I would suggest you do it before MBA. It's very, like, I got it because it was more luck than anything else that the position was open. I knew someone in the firm, and the I had a network, so they were open to interviewing me, and it
Yeah,
it panned out. But it's not very common to move to venture capital after MBA unless you're doing a startup. There's a lot of people who do startups that don't succeed, and then they get into venture capital funds because they've seen the ecosystem, they have a good network, and they can talk to a lot of
yeah,
startups in the network.
yeah,
That's largely it. And then obviously, once you invest in a startup, you have to monitor their performance and make sure that they're doing well. That is also some part of your role, but not as involved. You can't micromanage it. You talk to them once a week or a couple of times a week, and you give them strategic guidance based on your experience on what they should do, they should not do, what makes sense. That's a high level summary, and happy to answer specific questions if you have them.
yeah. So I think almost all questions are covered. So, like, is there anything you want to add that wasn't covered in the session and you think might be important?
I think all the questions have been covered. I mean, the only thing is more social and cultural than anything else. Like in India, there is a cultural pressure to do an MBA. I
Mm,
would
yeah,
suggest that you don't fall into that trap. You decide for yourself what career you want to build, And if MBA falls in that scheme of things, do it. If it doesn't fall in that scheme of things, don't do it. Don't do it just because everyone else is doing it. I mean, everyone knows this. It's not like I'm saying something that nobody knows. It's very natural, but just keep that at the back of your mind. It's very easy to forget that we're doing something because people are doing it.
Yeah, right, sir. That was wonderful. With that, we come to the end of the session. And thank you very much, Mehul, for taking out time and sharing with us these helpful tips and advice. Uh,
Thanks. My pleasure. Happy to do another session or take questions offline as well. You guys can reach out to me.
yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I hope you enjoyed the session.